As you guys know, it's March, and what happens in March that gives every single YouTuber a free video idea? March Madness. Now, there's a lot of things you could do for March Madness. Obviously, I'm a horror channel, so it's obviously something to do with horror. I could just pick a bunch of classic movies, go through which one's the best, but that's boring. I could just go through all the villains and see who would win. But that's also boring, so I went through and picked the opposite of the classics. I picked all of the worst horror films I have ever seen, and we're going to rank them against each other. Now, I thought about just doing worst sequel, but there was a lot that I want to talk about that weren't sequels, a couple of remakes, so I threw everything in here. We got 32 contestants. Let's see what the worst horror film ever is. Now, I didn't seed these. I literally just made my list of 32. Actually, it was like a list of like 50. But then I cut it down to 32 and then just popped them on a bracket. It's a random bracket. I have it here. I'm going to have it on screen as well. But starting off with our first matchup, we have Halloween Resurrection facing off against Jaws the Revenge. And this one, I actually think is a pretty decent way to start off because, yeah, it's easy. It's Jaws the Revenge. That's clearly the worst film here. I know a lot of people hate Halloween Resurrection, particularly Halloween fans. I am not a Halloween fan. I am a Friday the 13th guy. It's my franchise. If there was a movie like this in my franchise, I would be pissed. But there isn't. So I just don't have a lot of emotional investment in the Halloween series. And because of that, I have a little bit of fun with this movie. So I don't think Halloween Resurrection is nearly as awful as Jaws the Revenge is, because Jaws is this movie where we have a shark who has the cognitive ability to track down the family that killed his descendants. So, pretty easy one there. Our next matchup, we have a newcomer on the list, The Woman in the Yard from last year, facing off against the Netflix adaptation of Death Note. Now, Death Note is a very infamous film. People, especially people who are fans of the anime, think this movie is abysmal, unfathomably horrible beyond, everything. And Woman in the Yard last year was just a film that was just it's so boring, dude. This movie cannot do anything original to save its life. It has zero stakes. There was not one moment in this where my heart rate started up. So, yeah, it's just not a very good movie. But Death Note, also not a very good movie. I think Willem Dafoe kind of does a good job here. I like that we get Margaret Qualley. But this is a pretty tough one. They're both, 1-star movies, because they're just not very good. But I like the creativeness of some of the kills in Death Note, so I think the first round, I'm going to give it to Woman in the Yard. Our next matchup, we got a heavy hitter in here. I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. This is one of the worst slasher films I have ever personally seen. So, it's despicable, how horrendous this film is. They have a zombie Ben Willis coming back to kill for absolutely no reason. Facing off against Cry Wolf. Now, there is a lot to hate about both of these movies, but this is not a matchup. I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer cleans house, okay? Cry Wolf is bad. It is boring beyond belief, and nobody really dies in this film. It's just kind of like April Fool's, where it's like, oh, look, it was all a prank. But the reason I'm putting it above I Always Knew You Did Last Summer is that there's nothing I like about I Always Knew You Did Last Summer. I like Bon Jovi is in Cry Wolf, and he gets shot through the heart. All right, you got me. Our next matchup is Leprechaun 4 in Space, which was what I consider to be the worst Leprechaun movie, facing off against Ghost Ship. And this is another one that I think is pretty easy. I think the first round, we might have, a few difficult ones, but I feel like majority of them are pretty easy. I'm going to give this to Lep 4. Ghost Ship is a boring as hell movie. It is terrible. But that opening scene is one of the greatest scenes in all of horror. So, you have to give it that edge at least. Leprechaun 4 just has horrendous effects, terrible jokes, just nothing. It's just nothing. It's so boring and terrible, and the characters suck, and the romance sucks, and everything about it sucks. So, yeah. Then we head down to the bottom left of our bracket, starting off with Don't Breathe 2 versus Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. And again, like I said, this first round is going to have a lot of easy ones. This is not a matchup. This is a slaughter again. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 takes it with flying colors. Okay, Don't Breathe 2 is bad, and it is very offensive to the original Don't Breathe. The original Don't Breathe is great. This one is terrible, and it makes the guy who we know had a woman chained up in his basement who he was trying to artificially inseminate with a turkey baster of his own sperm. They try to make that guy the protagonist that you root for. So, yeah, it's bad, but there's at least some good action here, and it's not the unwatchable abomination that is Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. There are some bad movies in the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise, like some bad movies. But the fact that this is hands down the worst should tell you a lot. Now we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, facing off against Annabelle. Now, this is a tough one, I'll be honest. This is probably the toughest that we've had so far, or I guess besides Woman in the Yard and Death Note. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation, I think, has one thing going for it, and that is Matthew McConaughey's absolutely insane performance. And the fact that we get Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger in this movie is still kind of funny. But on the other hand, we have Annabelle, which has pretty much nothing going for it, but its lows aren't as low as Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is just a boring film throughout where nothing happens, and you can guess that whole plot along the way. So it just comes down to, I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre has lower lows, but it has higher highs. So I'm going to say that Annabelle is worse overall. So Annabelle, move on. Now we have the newcomer, Scream 7, facing off against the Babysitter Killer Queen. Now, Babysitter Killer Queen, I've seen a lot of people actually do like, but I hated it, okay? I love the first Babysitter movie, but they went way, way too far with the humor in this one. And a lot of it is not funny. A lot of it is super cringy. Did not like a lot of the characters and a lot of the character decisions that we made with these new characters, like having the love interest from the first one become the main villain. I hated that. It's terrible. But also we bring back some of the annoying people from the first movie. I just did not like this film. Scream 7, on the other hand, you know everything about Scream 7. I do think the first act is good, minus the opening scene, because they don't talk about that. But I think the first act of Scream 7 is good. And I was like, damn, it's actually a pretty good Scream movie. And then everything just goes downhill and crashes and burns in an explosion. So, yeah, this is tough. Like I said, there's stuff I like about Scream 7, but all of that, that makes it even worse. That there is stuff I like, but this movie completely destroyed that and just stomped it in the dirt, spit on it, and then said, yep, thank you for your money. So I don't like The Babysitter 2. There is some good parts. Obviously, Samara Weaving coming back in the end. I think the performances are still pretty good. There is some funny moments in here, and there's some pretty good kills. So I will give it the edge over Scream 7 and say Scream 7 moves on to the next round. Now, I have not seen all of the Hatchet movies. I haven't seen Hatchet 3 or Victor Crowley, but I have seen Hatchet 1 and 2, and Hatchet 2 is awful. So that is going to be the first one of this matchup, and it's facing off against Jason X. Now, I was going to do Jason Takes Manhattan, but I hate Jason X more, okay? Like I said with the Halloween Resurrection, my franchise is Friday the 13th. Don't with my franchise, okay? And Jason X is awful. It is not funny. It is cringy. It has some good kills, but that is it. I hate Uber Jason. I hate the normal Jason look. I just hate everything about this movie except for the Liquid Nitrogen's face smash. So it's facing off against Hatchet, which is pretty much the same thing. I hate everything about it except for Tony Todd and a couple good kills. Because we have Danielle Harris as the main character here. She's playing the character from the last film, and this one picks up directly from where Hatchet 1 left off, and it takes over almost an hour till we get to Victor Crowley again. So, like, you get, like, Victor Crowley in, like, the opening scene, and then we get her going through and trying to find people to take her back to the place where she just witnessed, like, 8 people get violently murdered. And she goes back, and everybody gets violently murdered again. Don't know what she expected there. And then there's just so many unneeded scenes. Like, there's a scene of this guy going through a camera from the, like, porn director in the last movie for, like, it goes on for, like, 3 minutes. And he's just going like, oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's not a good one. Oh, that's a good one. And it just goes on for way too long. So I hated that. But I hate Jason X a hell of a lot more. It offends me more because it tainted my franchise. Not to say that there wasn't bad movies before this. I'm just saying that this is far and away the worst. So, Jason X moves on. Now we move over to the right side of our bracket, and the first matchup we have is the worst film to come out of the last 5 years, in my opinion, Tarot, facing off against Critters 3. Now, there's a lot of bad movies in the Critters franchise, but I think Critters 3 is by far the worst one because it's just the most boring. Like, at least Critters 1 and 2 is a little bit fun. At least Critters 4 is in space. At least Critters Attack has some good kills. This movie has, like, 2 kills, and they're terrible, and you get, like, 3 critters, and you get Leonardo DiCaprio as a child, and that is literally all that you get as far as entertainment value in this film. But there's even less in Tarot, because I was literally watching this with my mom, and as it happened, I would say, oh yeah, that's gonna happen. Okay, now that person's gonna die. Oh, that's how that person dies. Every one of them. Like, every single time. Every plot beat, I was able to tell you exactly what happened. The characters are moronic in this. It pisses me off how stupid they are. So, I'm gonna say Tarot is worse, because Critters 3, at least, is just mind-numbingly boring. Tarot pissed me off, so I'm going to say that one's worse. Now we have a heavy hitter here. We have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, facing off against Final Destination 4. Now, on one side, you have a film that is completely terrible and almost unwatchable, and on the other hand, you have a pretty bad movie that destroyed the legacy of a franchise I really like. Now, Final Destination, not a fantastic franchise. I think I rated the first 5 movies 3 stars, except for 4, which I rated half a star, because this movie is terrible. The opening, disaster, awful. Most of the kills, terrible. I hate this one so much, because they don't do anything new, and the stuff that they do new, is terrible. So, it's pretty bad, but Winnie the Pooh is also pretty bad. It has no good kills. Winnie the Pooh looks like shit. There is one sequence in this film I like, but there's also one sequence in Hallucination that I like. So this is a toss-up here. But I'll say, because I did say most of the kills suck, there's still like 3 or 4 kills in here that I would be like, yeah, that's pretty big. That's pretty good. So because of that, that is enough to say that I think it's better than Winnie the Pooh, and Winnie the Pooh moves on. Now we have Return to Sleepaway Camp, or Sleepaway Camp 4, facing off against Fear.com. Now, Return to Sleepaway Camp is bad. But I could tell you what happened in this film. Don't know what the hell happens in Fear.com. They don't explain anything. They don't explain the plot. They don't explain anything that's happening. It is just so, like, I've watched this film within the last year, and I could not tell you a single plot beat that happens. It's just right through your head. Like, it's one of the only films that I can say I watched with full attention, and it just right through my head. Just never clocked anything. So, Fear.com is pretty bad. But, like I said, Return of the Living Dead 4... Return of the Living Dead, what the hell? Return to Sleepaway Camp is pretty bad as well. It has one of the most obnoxious twats of a main character. I hate him. He's terrible. But also, you do get a couple good scenes in here. I like that we get Angela back. I don't like how they brought her back, but I like that we get her back. Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 are already not pretty good. They're already not very good. So, like, they already kind of set my expectations low, and I wouldn't say this one is astronomically worse than the rest of the franchise. And again, like I said, at least I can tell you stuff that happens in here. So I'm going to say Fear.com is the worst of the 2 films. Now we have Pray for the Devil, which is another pretty recent one, facing off against Psycho 1998. And this is another one where one of them pisses me off, and one of them is just extremely boring and forgettable. I'm going to say Psycho 1998 is worse, because I can't really remember much of Pray for the Devil. It is just Like, it's just, dude, I was struggling to stay awake throughout this movie, and I watched it in the middle of the day. That's the problem with this movie. I watched it in the middle of the day, and I was like, oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my. Like, it's the most basic, boring demon possession movie you could ever watch, but, at least it's an original and new story. Not the exact same script, with Anne Heche's butthole thrown into the middle of it. Now we're on to the bottom left side of our bracket, and starting off, we have Seed of Chucky, the worst of the Child's Play franchise, versus White Noise. Now, White Noise, you might not have heard of. It is the 2004 movie with Michael Keaton. I think I have it over here. Yeah, right there. It's literally just on screen there at the bottom. The last one on screen. This movie, if you want to watch something more entertaining than White Noise, paint an entire wall in your house black, okay? And then sit there and watch it dry for an hour and a half. And that would be more entertaining than this movie. It is the most boring film I've ever had the displeasure of watching. Nothing happens. You're just sitting there like, I could not, for the life of me, tell you anything that happens in this film besides Michael Keaton's wife dies in the opening. On the other hand, Seed of Chucky's pretty bad. It is the most unfunny, pathetic attempt at humor in almost any horror movie. So it really came down to, for me, like, I don't like Seed of Chucky. It's terrible. But the Chucky stuff isn't that bad. So for that, White Noise is worse. Now we have two part 3s facing off. VHS Viral versus Jeepers Creepers 3. I think I have to give it to the one that I wasn't able to finish. And I'll tell you, there is a lot of films that are terrible beyond belief that I have finished. Some that are on this list, such as VHS Viral. However, Jeepers Creepers 3 was so terrible, I shut it off. And that is why I have never seen Jeepers Creepers Reborn, because people say it's worse. That is astonishing that that's possible, because I shut this shit off halfway through. I was like, oh my god, this is not even worth my time. If I was ever going to do a Jeepers Creepers ranking, that killed it, because, I mean, it also, you know, the director is a piece of shit, horrendous person, so this is the legacy he deserves, but, yeah. I think it's worse than VHS Viral. If we were just going with Vicious Circles from VHS Viral, then we have a competition. But the other 3 segments have at least something going for them, so I think Jeepers Creepers 3 is the landslide worst of the 2. Now we have the entire New Strangers trilogy, Strangers Chapter 1, 2, and 3, facing off against Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Now, the Strangers trilogy is just awful. Like, the worst trilogy I've ever had the displeasure of viewing. All of them were 1 star or lower. But Freddy's Dead, okay, so here's the thing. The movie that pisses me off the most, Paranormal Activity 7. The movie that offends me the most, Jason X. The one that I think is probably the actual worst, Freddy's Dead. I think I'm going to have to give it to Freddy's Dead. Like, I've always considered Freddy's Dead to be one of the worst films I have ever seen, and that's just because I haven't really thought down and, you know, wrote out a bracket to figure out which one's the worst, but I think it has to at least clear the first round. Now we have a matchup for the ages. Black Christmas 2019 facing off against Evil Bong 888 Infinity High. This is the 9th Evil Bong movie. As you guys can see, I have the stash box back here, okay? I would consider myself a fan of the series, okay? But 888, not one of them. Well, this Evil Bong doesn't kill people. She traps people in Bong World, so that's what happens there. But in this movie, she's not doing that. She's helping our main character run a restaurant. And that's the whole movie. They're running the restaurant, and they're making food, and they're serving people. But we have possibly the most infuriating film I've ever had to sit through on the other side, and that is Black Christmas 2019. This movie sucks so much ass, okay? They tried doing a concept here, kind of like male masculinity, toxic masculinity. It doesn't work, okay? Obviously, I'm a guy, so if it works for you, cool. But to me, it just seemed like men are horrible pieces of shit that need to get murdered. And that's what they do to all the men in this film, even though it's revealed that they are mind-controlled. Obviously, some of them are still pretty crappy people, but it's like, oh yeah, they're mind-controlled. Kill them. Would I rather be bored out of my mind for an hour, or enraged to degrees I didn't know I could possibly reach for an hour? And I think I would rather be enraged, because at least I'm feeling something. And also, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't let Evil Bong move on to at least the second round. So Evil Bong 888, welcome to round 2. Now we're entering the Sweet 16 here, starting off with Jaws 4, The Revenge, facing off against Woman in the Yard. And again, like I said, Woman in the Yard is boring beyond belief. Like, there is nothing in this film that I ever was like, oh, what's going to happen here? But Jaws 4 is worse. Now we move on to a heater of a matchup. I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer versus Leprechaun 4 in Space. These are two of the worst films I've ever had the displeasure of seeing. One of them is completely boring and infuriates me. The other is completely boring and infuriates me a little bit less. The one that infuriates me a little bit less is the Leprechaun series, because at least I know what I'm getting with that film. I Always Know What You Did Last Summer. Yeah, you probably knew that this film was going to go pretty far. So now we have Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out, facing off against Annabelle. And like I said in the last one, Annabelle is just, it's just nothing. But at least it's not terrible. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 is awful. The characters are awful. The acting is the worst I've ever seen. It is diabolical how nothing happens throughout the course of this film. So, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, easy move on. Now we have Scream 7 versus Jason X. And this may be recency bias, but I think at the time, Scream 7 pisses me off more right now because it's more fresh in my mind, it's more recent. But Jason X is still the film I consider to be the worst in a franchise that I absolutely love. But like I said, Scream 7, the opening scene excluded, the first third is good. And I think there's some good kills in here. So I'm going to say Jason X is worse than Scream 7. I'm sure a lot of you guys were rooting for it to go all the way, but there's some good. There's no good with Jason X. Now we head over to the other side of the bracket where we have our first matchup, our recent matchup. I think the two worst films of the last 5 years, Taro and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. It's Taro. Like I said, I think Taro's the worst film of the last 5 years. This movie sucks so much. Like, at least with Winnie the Pooh, I was like, all right, let's see how this plays out. Like, there's a possibility it goes places. It doesn't, but it had me at least slightly invested. Taro, I was like, please, for the love of God, end it. End the movie, end my suffering, end me. Then we have Fear.com versus Psycho 1998. And Psycho 1998 is the exact same film as Psycho. It is the exact same thing, shot for shot, beat for beat, line for line. The exact same thing as Psycho. For that reason, I hate it. I hate shot-for-shot remakes, and the only thing they add in is a shot of Norman Bates masturbating and Anne Heche's asshole. So, this film is terrible. But Fear.com is worse. Because at least Psycho, I can have the novelty of being like, okay, let's see how Vince Vaughn can do Norman Bates, which is not well. But at least, you get that, where you can watch it and have a little bit of fun with it. Fear.com, it's not even so bad that you can have fun with it. It's just horrendous. Now we move on to the bottom down here. We have White Noise versus Jeepers Creepers 3. And again, I was able to finish White Noise. I think it's only because I was watching it with somebody. If I was watching it alone, I probably would have shut it off, because it is just... I would have probably fallen asleep, actually, is what would have happened more realistically. Now, the reason I hate it so much is because there is something with... You have something with Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. At the end of Jeepers Creepers 2, you get him sitting there. And you could have just been like, all right, now it's going to be the girl from part 1, the guy from part 2, and they're going to face off against the creeper once and for all in Jeepers Creepers 3. Instead, they're like, what if we just take what we had from Jeepers Creepers 1 and Jeepers Creepers 2 and just take this little film and just kind of sneak it in the middle there. So, this is so tough. It's like, would I rather be crapped on the face or pissed on the face? Like, neither. But, again, I think it comes down to, like, would I rather be bored out of my mind or infuriated? And I think I'd rather be infuriated. So, and also, the creeper is always intimidating. So, that's going to be my one little tiny nugget that's going to say that it is better than White Noise. Now our last matchup of this round, we have Freddy's Dead versus Evil Bong 8. Damn. The most boring film ever made. Okay, not most boring film, because, you know, White Noise is. But, facing off against Freddy's Dead. So, this movie does piss me off. It's not funny, but like I said, it has a couple of good jokes, and that hearing aid scene is fantastic. That's enough. That's enough to say Evil Bong 8 is worse. Starting off our Elite 8, we have Jaws 4 versus I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. And I was kind of worried that I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer was just going to clean sweep this bracket. But yeah, it is very much worse than Jaws 4. Jaws 4 is bad. It's bad. But it is not nearly as bad as I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 versus Jason X. Again, I was kind of worried Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 was just going to sweep, because it is, yes, a lot worse than Jason X, because, like I said with Jason X, there is a couple of redeeming qualities. The liquid nitrogen face mash. That's enough to put it over. That's how bad Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 is that that's enough to be like, yeah, no, it's a better film. But moving on to our right side, we have Tarot versus Fear.com. It's Tarot. Tarot's a worse film, okay? Now, obviously, Fear.com fails to tell any sort of coherent story, but at least I didn't know what was going to happen next. Yeah, I think Tarot's worse. Now we have White Noise versus Evil Bong 888. All I'm saying is, you tell me to double feature these two bitches, I am out like a light switch in 1 minute. Each time, each film. They're just so boring. So it comes down which film's more boring. At least Evil Bong, the Evil Bong is always entertaining. White Noise is just nothing. So I'm going to say White Noise is our final entry into the final four. Now, we have our final four. We had I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Tarot, and White Noise. Those are our 4 worst horror films. And starting off on the left side, we have the hardest matchup of the day. I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer versus Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. Okay. Now, on one hand, you have a boring as hell movie that could have had something going for it. And on the other side, you have a film that is so awful and horrendous that you should be able to have a little bit of fun with it. But you can't, because the dialogue is horrible, the writing is terrible. I just think everything about Always Knew Last Summer is terrible. I also think everything about Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 is terrible. There is nothing here. The characters suck. The 2 girls are so personality-less, I get them mixed up all the time. You forget that one of the girls is blind, which you shouldn't forget about that, because she's blind. But I think I have my decision. I am going to go with Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 as the worst of the 2 films. It is close, but they're both half stars. Like, you're, like, again, it's like getting compared. Like, would you rather have someone take a shit on your face or someone piss on your face? And I don't know. Now we have Taro versus White Noise. And I think this one is pretty easy. Taro infuriates me more. So I'm going to say Taro is our finalist from the right side. And the final matchup, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 versus Taro. Your winner of the worst horror film I've ever seen in my life. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. Better watch out. Now, I didn't know what my least favorite was going to be going into this film, or into this video, I mean. But now that I'm here, I'm like, probably should have known this film was horrible. For all the reasons I've already mentioned. Now, that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe. So, and you want to see videos like it in the future, I'll be sure to do another bracket next year with a whole new creative concept. Probably not the same thing we did this year. But if you want to see some of my rankings, you can click the playlist on screen, or whatever videos here. I think I'll probably just put, like, best for viewers. So, whatever you guys want, just click that, if you want to see some more from me. And until next time, I'm Ethan Horror. This has been Ethan Horror.